Let's talk about Star Wars: The Last Jedi. Let me check my notes here. Hi, Kenneth. Welcome to your Airbnb. That's not my notes. All right, let's dig right into it. Let's cut to the chase. Let's get to the core of this. Now, I'm already seeing people today on Facebook, social media, talking about how The Last Jedi is the best Star Wars movie since 1980. I strongly disagree. Now, don't get me wrong, I think that Rian Johnson did a great job. I think the actors did Let me take that back. Hold off on Rian Johnson. We're going to go down a list of characters. I'm going to tell you what I liked, disliked about the movie. This thing is going to be so spoiler-filled that if you haven't seen the movie yet, you should absolutely stop watching this because it's going to ruin the movie for you. I don't want to be that person. So if you don't want to hear spoilers for Star Wars: The Last Jedi, you should turn this video off now, go to the theater, watch the movie, then come back and let's discuss it.
3 hours later.
Okay, did you go see it? Star Wars: The Last Jedi was so hyped. I mean, they had 25 TV spots that weren't trailers, that weren't exactly trailers. You had at least 3 full trailers, I believe. I could be wrong about that. Anywho, there was a lot of misdirection in the trailers, as I'm sure a lot of you know by now if you've seen the movie, which if you're still watching this, then you've got a serious problem. The hype behind this movie was ginormous. It was really big. I almost feel like in some ways it was bigger than The Force Awakens. I went into this movie with a preconceived notion of certain things happening based on trailer, and I know because of the past watching movies where trailers show things that don't actually happen in a movie, whatever. That doesn't even matter. I just want to get into the movie. Let's talk about it, and let me give you my full, honest review and opinion of the movie. Everything that happened with the original characters in this movie was spot on. I felt perfect. And I mean, maybe it could have been better, maybe it could have been worse, but I was very happy when all was said and done. The original characters. All right, let's go character by character, and then we're going to get into the plot. The movie starts out with a space battle scene, which some of the Star Wars movies do. It focuses mainly on Poe Dameron and Leia and General Hux. And right off the bat, let me say this. Poe Dameron's character is much better developed in this movie, but I'd still like to get more than 15 minutes of him. Like, I really think that they need to concentrate. If they're moving in the direction of the new characters, then at least give him more screen time. Like, Finn has his story with Rose and Canto Bight in the casino, which, that was a fucking clusterfuck if you ask me, right off the bat. Let's go back to the beginning. Poe Dameron is trying to get General Hux hooked on the line here so that they can download some information or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's achieved. He wants to bomb the dreadnought that shows up, which apparently they're very rare, these dreadnoughts that have these giant cannons that shoot t-shirts at the enemy. And then they put the t-shirts on, mind control thing. I don't know why he went into that. And then Big Bird shows up and he eats a pizza. Poe Dameron, I thought he was great in the movie. I think he's a great character, and I think he needs to be developed a lot more. Although this movie did a lot to develop his character more. Finn wakes up from his induced coma and immediately is wondering where Rey is. Starts off on a mission to try to save her. There's this beacon thing going on where Leia has a bracelet and she has a bracelet. So Rey can find her way back to the Resistance after she's done finding Luke Skywalker. Finn's story immediately intersects with Rose's when they meet each other. When he's trying to leave, she shocks him. They decide they're going to go... Well, first they're going to contact Maz Kanata to try to find someone to help them get into the ship, because they found out that the Empire, or the First Order, is able to track them through hyperspace, which is very uncommon, apparently. So they discover how they're doing this, and they contact Maz Kanata. Now, Finn knew Maz Kanata for all of 10 minutes maybe? And Poe, as far as I know, unless he's had some contact with her outside of the cinematic universe, I don't know that they know each other, but they communicated as if they've been best friends for years. Anywho, they contact her to find somebody to help them get onto this ship and stop tracking them so they can jump to light speed. And they're running out of gas and fuel, and they're stuck in space, so they're trying to outrun them, the First Order. And so Finn's story takes him and Rose to Canto Bight, which is a casino city on Cantonica, where they're supposed to find a character that will help them do what they need to do. Instead, they get arrested. Now the whole casino scene, I like the idea of it. I like seeing a new aspect, especially the fact that these are the people that are supplying the weapons, not only to the First Order, but also the Resistance. It's just like our real world, the way things work here. You know, I mean, it's like arms dealers don't care what side you're on. They just care about making their money. So they really impressed me in the fact that they showed this in the Star Wars universe. We've never seen anything like this. We know that obviously there's bounty hunters, which play both sides of the field, but this is a whole new thing, and I thought it added a little bit of depth to the movie. Unfortunately, the whole section was beautiful and redeeming, but at the same time, it just seemed forced. It seemed like they went off on this mission just so they could focus on these characters and then bring them back. And actually, the funny thing is they fail in their mission. They don't find the guy. Well, they find the guy. They don't get him. They get thrown in prison. They meet DJ. Don't join. I still don't know who Benicio del Toro's character's name actually is. Doesn't really matter. Anywho, he ends up saving them from this chase scene, and they take off. I'm getting more into plot again, so let's get back to characters. Rose is an interesting new character. I think you were forced, or you were... She's a very lovable character. She's very, like, a kind little kid type character. I don't want to say little kid, but like a little sister type character. She's literally a little sister, and her older sister gets killed at the beginning of the movie. And, like, you're supposed to, like, I don't know. I think they're trying to force you to feel this bond between them and sadness for Rose, but you never heard more than 3 or 4 words out of her sister's mouth before she was dead. The only way you know that they're somehow related or connected is that they both share this one necklace, and it's one of those, you know, fit them together, and it's great. So I think it says BFF, and then, ta-da, magic. Rose is an okay character who just seems like it was one more person in the movies that they just didn't need. It was like you added Haldo, you added Rose, you added Benicio del Toro's DJ character, you know, and you actually kind of, in a way, you now have Snoke because he's a physical being. So let's go back a little bit. So we've got Poe, great. Finn, I like his character, but he's almost like a like a one-note one pony note penny. And I don't fault him in this movie. I think he did a good job. It just seemed like the same character and really no development. Like, his main concern was Rey, and then his main concern wasn't Rey. Like, they go to Canto Bight, they free those, I can't remember the name of the creatures that they ride on, and they stun them, and it shows them, you know, almost in a way like being tortured into almost like a greyhound or a horse, how, you know, they're prodded to go faster and faster to be the best. And I love the fact that they spent a moment in the Star Wars universe doing something that I really appreciate in the real world, and that's obviously seeing animals taken care of. Nonetheless, that whole scene was long, drawn out, introduced basically 2 new characters that I don't think we really needed both of them. Finn could have gone on his own with BB-8, and I think DJ's character could have gotten involved, and that would have been interesting. But DJ, let's talk about DJ for a second. He looked like such a badass in all these, like, promotional photos that they've shown of him, and you know, he's got the weird studded that just pops up here and there. It's like it's not even consistent. Well, that's fine. That doesn't bother me. But his character is interesting in the fact that he doesn't take sides. He knows that tomorrow the First Order is going to win. Then the following day the Resistance is going to win. And it's going to be like that forever until something is resolved. So he chooses not to take a side, and his character is a very Lando Calrissian, almost Han Solo in you know, A New Hope. And I appreciate that, but he just, I don't know, he was weak. It was very weak. He was portrayed well. Benicio del Toro did a great job acting, as he always does. It's just, I didn't think his character had I couldn't sink my teeth into him. There wasn't enough there, I guess. It was like a slider when you want a double quarter pounder, You know what I mean? Haldo. Let's go to Haldo. Okay, so Haldo takes over after Leia sustains some injuries. I'm going to talk about that in a minute too. But Haldo comes in, Poe Dameron, interacts with her, and she doesn't tell him her plans. Like, okay, it could have... I'm kind of getting ahead of myself by saying this. This is getting into plot at this point. But Poe Dameron, loves the Resistance. But they make him out, or they try to make him out to be a hothead who just wants to run and gun and get things done. But I don't think that's necessarily his character. I think that they kind of, forced it on him, the Resistance, in such a way that if they would just give him the reins a little bit, I think he could come up with some great ideas. I mean, they came up with a great idea to stop being tracked through hyperspace. Haldo and him butt heads, and eventually he decides to go mutiny on the ship, and we'll get to that during the plot. Haldo was okay. Bordering on boring. It's, once again, they introduced this new character to serve just, these little big plot points, but just to quickly, explain scenes, I guess, in a way. And at the very end, she does go out like a champ. I felt it coming. I was like, all right, all the escape pods are leaving the, it's not the medical freighter, it's one of their larger ships. And she turns the ship. And I knew at that moment she was going to go into light speed into Snoke's dreadnought, and that was fucking cool as shit. And Rian Johnson, I have to give him a lot of credit here, because light speed happens, the moment happens, and it's dead silence in the theater. There are no sounds coming through the speaker for a good 3 to 5 seconds. And then, boom, the explosion happens, and the ship starts falling apart, and stuff goes on inside. And her death was fantastic. That was great. I thought that was cool. But the character was, it's you introduced her in The Last Jedi, you killed her in The Last Jedi, and she only served these few little plot points to move the story forward. She could have put the thing on autopilot. She didn't have to be the one that just, did that. I'm sure with the technology in the Star Wars universe, you could have accomplished the same thing without dying. Anywho, I respect it, and I like what they did with the character at the end. Kind of redeemed her a little bit. Leia. Okay, so Leia, obviously it's great to see Carrie Fisher one last time in the role of Princess Leia, or General, Organa, or whatever you want to call her. She'll always be the princess to me. She had much more screen time in this, and I'm glad, because she was supposed to have a lot more screen time in Episode 9, which now she won't because she died, unfortunately. There are only 2 scenes that really stand out to me, and one of them I'm going to leave until I talk about Luke. The first scene is, you've seen it in the trailer. Kylo Ren's coming in, Ben Solo's coming in, he senses his mother senses him, and he can't pull the trigger. Obviously he didn't pull the trigger. But 2 ships that are alongside him do, and blow out the control center, and Leia goes out into space, and I'm like, holy shit, that was awesome. It sucks for Leia, obviously, but it's awesome that they did that. He couldn't do it, somebody else did it, and now, obviously, he's upset about it. Then, as she's floating through space, and you can see, crystalline... her skin's starting to crystallize. It looks like she's getting cold. I guess space doesn't work quite the way in Star Wars as it does in our world. Because if that happened to me, I'd be dead in a second. She wakes up suddenly, and she flies back to the ship. So, when it happened, I thought one of 2 things was happening. Either Kylo Ren was force pushing her back to the ship so that she could survive, which I think would have been better. But what I believe actually happened is she was using the Force to propel herself through space towards the ship. It was a little cheesy, but I could accept it because Star Wars have always had those little cheesy moments where you're like, well, it's fucking Star Wars, whatever. So I chalk it up to a thumbs up rather than a thumbs down scene. Let's talk about Rey. Okay, so Rey, obviously at the end of the last movie, she walks up, she's giving Luke the lightsaber. Luke takes the lightsaber, picks up right at that moment, I guess it's the second or third scene into the movie, and he looks at it, and you see this reverence in this moment, this, this old Jedi who's hidden himself, secluded himself away from, the universe, and actually shut himself out of the Force, like shut down that part of him so that people can't find him. He doesn't even feel. That's why when Han died, he had no idea. He had shut that part of the universe off to himself. He wasn't using the Force, I guess, as a means to stay hidden. Anywho, so she hands him it, he looks at it, he looks at her, and then he tosses it over his shoulder and like walks down the hill. And that's the first humorous comedic moment that should not have happened in this movie. Like, I get it, like, I know where the character's going, like, Luke was either going to just be this awesome cool Jedi, or he was going to be this recluse, or he's going to be a Yoda type character. Nonetheless, he was not going to be the Luke Skywalker that we knew. But for him to just throw his father's lightsaber away like that and just walk away, I mean, maybe it was certainly in character based on the Luke Skywalker that we come to know over the course of the next, almost 3 hours of the movie. However, it didn't feel right. It didn't sit well with me when it happened. I laughed nonetheless because it was a very humorous moment, but I don't know. I would have handled it differently. Anywho, so that's where Rey's journey starts. She tells him how Leia has sent her to retrieve him because they need his help. He obviously wants nothing to do with the Resistance or the world because he's jaded by what's happened to him, and we'll get into that when we talk about Luke. So she's persistent. She's that typical, I want to be a monk. I knock on the door. You don't let me in. I'll sleep outside. I'll knock the next day. For 100 days, finally, you let me in, whatever. There's that sense of character to her that she's committed to be here. And Luke also senses in her, obviously, that she's not just there to get him to help the Resistance. That there's something more to her and she needs help with. But like I said, I'll get into that with Luke. Finally, he meets Chewbacca again, and that was a touching moment. That was one of the 2 or 3 moments in the movie that actually brought me to tears. Like, I was just like, oh, there it is. Hang on. And when he finally discovers that Han is dead by Kylo Ren's hands, it's not spoken in the movie, but it's kind of left there to linger, and in the next scene it's obvious that it happened. And so, anywho, I'm getting off of Rey. Well, I guess we're going to have to talk about Rey and Luke together as one entity because they spend so much time in the movie together. So, she consistently follows Luke throughout the first third of the movie. There's this hilarious scene where, you're going over Octu and you're starting to see these creatures. Like, you see this giant sea creature in the ocean all of a sudden, which is just kind of off in the distance. It's not even focus of that scene. And you're just like, what was that? And then Luke is milking these odd bipedal creatures. Now, if it had been like a cow or something, it would have been a little bit easier to deal with, but they're just sitting on the rocks, and they're these weird looking, you'll have to obviously see the movie if you haven't already seen it, and he starts milking them into a bottle and drinking it directly, and it was just so gross and weird and like, whatever. There's a scene he eventually walks off, and Rey is following him as she's been doing, until she hears these voices, the Force calling her from the Force-sensitive tree where Luke has all the original Jedi texts. So she goes in there, she starts looking around, all of a sudden you hear behind her, "Who are you?" And we've seen that in the trailers, and that's when she, he asks her, "Why are you here?" And she said, "Well, Leia sent me, no, why are you here?" And that's when she opens up and says, something is awakened inside of me that's always been there, and I can't remember if it's then or a little bit later on, but he finally agrees to train her. No, it's not there, actually. He tells her about the original Jedi text and says that infamous line, "Now the Jedi must end." Then they go back to the huts. She has her own hut at this point. He's got his own hut, and he's in his hut. And all of a sudden, she, through the Force, is face to face with Kylo Ren. Neither of them seem to know why they're having this connection. I think they start to understand each other a little bit, because this happens 2 or 3 times before it doesn't happen again in the movie. And she goes to shoot him, blast a hole through the little huts that they're living in. And they have these little caretakers. They look like little nuns that come up, and they've apparently always maintained the very first Jedi temple and repaired them and kept them in working order. There's no like technology, but like in living order, I guess. And then Luke finally finds out what's going on and realizes that something's going on that they're able to. This is a force power apparently he's not familiar with, or whatever. It doesn't matter. He agrees to give her 3 lessons, which I thought was really cool because when you think about Jedi training, you know, it's so intense, and it starts when you're a little, you know, almost a baby, and goes right up to, you know, your middle-aged years or whatever. And I don't know if your training is ever really complete or not, but anywho, I like the fact that it was almost like not a Billy Goat's Gruff, but like I can't think of a good example, but he agrees to give her 3 lessons. And the first lesson, she sits on the rock, and he says, close your eyes and reach out. And now, as much as I knocked the humor in this movie, I did like the scene where she's actually physically reaching out. And then Luke's got this like long like leaf in his hand. He starts tickling her hand. He's like, can you feel that? Can you feel it? She's like, I can feel it. It's real. I can feel it. And then he whacks her with it. And he's just like, you weren't feeling anything. And then he tells her to reach out with her feelings. And that's when this dark side cave moment happens. Apparently on this island, just like with Yoda on Dagobah, there's this dark side region of this place that's calling to her, that's got something to give to her. And she doesn't resist it at all in the vision that she's having. And Luke is screaming for her to resist it. She finally, you know, you see the rocks crack, and he's just like, whoa, you know, you saw her in the trailer or the TV spot. Anywho, the rocks crack. I'm telling the story of the movie, and I don't want to do that. So let me cut to the chase here. She finally decides she's going to go down to this cave. She goes into this cave. And it's a very weird moment. It's almost like that flashback moment when she touches the Skywalker lightsaber for the first time. And she's a mirror image of herself for eternity. Like, you can just see, you know, hundreds of her in both directions. And she does this, and then the next one does it, and the next one does it. Anyway, she gets to the front of it, and there's this mirror-type wall there, and she touches it, and she needs to know where her parents are. And this, you see the shadowy figure come forward, and it clears up, and it's her. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, you didn't explain anything. Anywho, she starts training with a lightsaber by herself. Luke never even actually helps her out with that. He apparently thinks she's good enough at that. Okay, so Rey obviously is growing stronger in the Force as she's on the island. She has another communication with Kylo Ren. She decides she's going to leave. Just like Luke decided to leave on Dagobah to go help his friends, she's going to go try to help Kylo Ren escape the dark side of the Force and turn back to the light. And she offers Luke, you know, that position one more time to come with her, and he turns her down. So she leaves with Chewbacca and R2-D2 on the Millennium Falcon and a few porgs, apparently, for some reason. Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren, just like Darth Maul, was always portrayed in merchandise to be this badass character, and obviously he is badass in the eyes of many people. You know, Hux, he throws Hux around in this movie several times, just, you know what I mean? But you know what I mean? Know what I'm saying? But for somebody who's portrayed as such a badass, like, he never really lives up to that. Like, he has never been able to defeat, you know, Rey, who's never had any training at the first encounter with him. Anyway, Kylo Ren, Snoke, Star Wars. Let me get back on track. So, there's a moment where Rey does go, just like Luke goes to confront Vader and the Emperor, and or Vader to try to turn him and takes him before the Emperor. So the 3 of them are in the throne room with the Praetorian guards that once again have been hyped up to be these, whoa, mysterious characters. Okay, so let me say this too. What the fuck ever happened with the Knights of Ren? They are not in this movie at all. There's no mention of them whatsoever. What happened to them? Why aren't they by his side? Like, he probably could have kicked so much more ass if he had those guys there to, like, back him up. Doesn't matter. They're not there. That's a huge... You dropped the ball there, Rian Johnson. Like, I mean, you introduced them in The Force Awakens, no mention of them. Let's talk about the balls dropping. I'm going to hit you rapid fire with a bunch of things I didn't like about the movie at this moment. Rey. She finally discovers who her parents are. Kylo Ren, for some reason, is the one that knows through these shared visions that they're having. Her parents were spice dealers or junkers who basically sold her into slavery. That's it. They were no one. Nothing. Like, fuck you. Like, you... This story has always been about the Skywalker lineage, the Skywalker family, and I really felt like this trilogy was going to be that as well. Now, don't get me wrong, I realize Kylo Ren is technically a Skywalker, even though he's also a Solo, but I didn't want Rey to be Luke's daughter, but at the same time, I felt like they had to somehow make her a Skywalker, and the fact that there's no other Skywalkers in the universe, apparently, you know, being Luke's daughter would have made the only sense in the world. Perhaps even if they had done something with like an Anakin thing where she had no father and it turns out that Luke somehow manipulated the Force and created her, I would have been okay with that. The fact that they were no one, like, just ruined it. And like, there was a sweet little justice to it because, like, now you look at her character growing up on Jakku, and always waiting for her parents who love her, they're going to come back. And that was all just a lie, basically. She was telling herself to get by, you know what I mean? And I think even Kylo Ren says it, you've always known that they were not coming back for you. They're actually dead. They're dead. They're just nobodies, and they're dead. Bullshit. That's fucking bullshit. Like, you don't string people along for 2 years and just be like, yeah, they were nobody. I mean, I guess you can, but I didn't appreciate that. All right, second, and by far, in my opinion, the biggest ball drop in this movie, and I will say, hopefully, Episode 9 handles a little bit of this, Snoke. So you finally meet Snoke for the first time. He's pretty tall. I think he's supposed to be about 9 feet tall. He didn't really look 9 feet tall to me. He's a very arrogant character, very powerful in the Force. Like, instead of Force lightning, there's a moment where he just snaps, and all of a sudden Kylo Ren is just like a ball of lightning and falls to the ground. Like, he's not dead. Like, he was just teaching him a lesson. But, like, I mean, like, you know, with the Emperor, it was always like, you know, it was like an intensity thing that he could build on. But, like, with Snoke, it was just like, boom, you just got the ever-loving shit kicked out of you with, like, a half a second ball of lightning that just engulfed you. Anyhow, he does this, you know, he's throwing Rey around the room and, like, making her scream, and, like, she reaches for her lightsaber and it comes at her, and he makes it spin around her and whack her on the head, which was a little humorous, and I didn't think that moment needed that. I got what it was trying to say, but it came across, because it was set up throughout the movie, that there's so many stupid little funny moments, that at this moment, I don't think it needed, they could have done something, or they could have handled it better if they had less humor earlier on. This wouldn't have come across as humorous, and it would have served a better purpose. Anywho, like, he's just manhandling them, or Rey, like she's nothing. Like, come here, like, basically just forces her across the floor. He has full control of the situation. He's clearly very powerful, and I guess in some of the novelizations they talked about how the Emperor heard this calling from deep space, and it was this powerful dark side energy that was calling him. And it turns out, as far as I know, I think it was supposed to be Snoke. I never read the book, so I can't comment on that. But I'm also upset. A little side note: there was a Lego set that came out with Snoke on his dreadnought, and it shows a little Force ghost, or a hologram rather, of Emperor Palpatine. I was like, what the hell is that? Did he leave him a message, or is this just his personal diary that maybe Snoke got something out of? It doesn't matter. It never happened in the movie. And Snoke just taunts Rey and basically, you know, finally starts to believe that Kylo Ren's resolve has turned to the dark side and he is his faithful servant. And I'm not going to explain the scene here. I know I've spoiled a lot already, but I think this is one of those scenes that I'd rather just not talk about. Anywho, in a strange twist of fate, somehow Kylo Ren is able to manipulate Snoke to believe that he's about to kill Rey when he actually is going to kill Snoke. Not physically in a battle. I won't explain how it happens, because it is a very cool moment, and it does happen, and Snoke is dead. Like, I'm like, this is another Rey's parents moment to me. Like, it was almost like Rian Johnson came in, looked at, like, J.J. Abrams' The Force Awakens, and was like, nah, I don't like that, let's just scrap that. No, that's dumb. Like, people are talking about this being the best Star Wars movie in, 30 years, and it's a Star Wars movie. Let me say that. I should have said this at the beginning. I love Star Wars, and if there's a Star Wars movie in the theater, I'm going to watch it, and a part of me will love it because it's Star Wars. But I've got to be honest, like, I mean, like, Snoke goes out like a dirty little bitch. For the last 2 years, people on the internet, I included, had to know who Snoke was. Like, he couldn't just be this character, like this new character. There was something about this character that he was the resurrection of Palpatine. He was an old Sith Lord. He was, he's Luke Skywalker from the future. Anything. There was all these crazy theories. And because of all these theories, like, I thought, one of these has got to be right. He's got to be somehow connected to the past. Through Palpatine, maybe he's Palpatine's old master who survived death or something. It didn't matter to me. But the fact that he was cut down and that was it. Like, you never... Like eventually you learn about the Emperor. Vader, you learn about right off the bat. Like, you learn about him through Obi-Wan when Luke goes and meets Obi-Wan for the first time. But Snoke, it's like... He was a hologram in the first movie and supposed to be the super badass. He's introduced in The Last Jedi as a super badass, which he really is. And then he's dead. Like, you never spent any time on this character. Who is he? Where is he from? Why is he disfigured? Explain something to me. That has got to be the number one reason why, or one of the top 5 reasons, I would say, that I didn't love this movie the way other people are saying they love this movie. It was a cop-out, and I just feel it was awful. That, at that moment, like, it had already been building in me throughout the movie. I was just like, why are they doing that? Why is it so funny? Like, why is this character here? Why, like, it was 3 hours. I don't know what the runtime is, but it was 3 hours of awesome Star Wars action that just didn't tie together very well. It just didn't glue. Like, Empire flowed like the salmon of Capistrano. You know what I mean? It's like there was a gel to it. There was a comfort even in the awkwardness and uncomfortableness of finding out that Vader is Luke's father and Han getting in kryptonite, carbonite. Like, a lot of people are comparing the two movies because there are some comparisons. There's also a lot of comparisons to Jedi. But it wasn't the second act, I felt, in a great Star Wars trilogy the way the Empire was. Attack of the Clones even served a better, arc. We're McDonald's. We have the golden arches. They're McDowell's. They have the golden arcs. It just was a Star Wars movie with amazing moments. Luke finally, all right, there's a reunion between Luke and Leia that it just, that brought tears to my eye because I knew it was the last time that they would ever share screen time together because he's dead. She's dead. And then at the very end, he decides he's going to confront Kylo Ren. So he shows up, he says goodbye to Leia and apologizes, said, I'm so sorry, I should have been here, da-da-da. His hair is cut, his beard is brown, and he has the Skywalker lightsaber, which was destroyed in a battle between Kylo Ren and Rey when they were both forcing it, and they pulled it apart and it was destroyed. So I'm like, what the fuck? Like, how did he cut his hair, dye his beard, and have the lightsaber again? This doesn't make any sense. Anywho, he goes out onto the field, absolutely super badass. This is the moment with Luke that I was waiting for. I really thought he was going to start crushing those guerrilla walkers with the Force and just throwing them, but he just stands there. And then Kylo Ren's freaking out. He's like, I want every, gun to shoot him right now. And they're just unloading on Luke. You can't see anything. It's just smoke and this red dust and the white dust mixing. And it's just this, like, thousands and thousands of shots at Luke. And the smoke clears. And Luke just looks up at him and kind of, oh, I can accept this one. He was just like, you did nothing. You have nothing. There's nothing you can do to hurt me whatsoever. So Kylo's like, I gotta go fight him. And then Hux says something. And once again, he just throws Hux against the wall. Now Kylo Ren is, by the way, the Supreme Leader. I guess you just gotta kill that one and then you become him. Anywho, he comes down and Luke says, if you strike me down, I will stay with you for the rest of your life, just the way your father has. Because he knows that by Kylo Ren killing Han Solo, it's left a scar in him that every time any emotional moment comes up, he thinks about his father. That's what I'm assuming he was trying to say. Anywho, there is a lightsaber battle. Like, it's short, but, like, it's so sweet. Like, Luke, you see him moving in some parts of it, almost like Yoda. I mean, you're not getting the flips and stuff like that, but you get a Matrix move out of him, and all of a sudden he's like rolling and spinning around, and like finally he closes down his lightsaber, and he's just like, you know, he says that line, and Kylo Ren's like, yeah, and he just runs at him, and he cuts right through him, and he turns around, and he's not harmed at all, and you're like, what force power is this? And then he does it again, he runs it right through him. And Luke looks at him and says, I'll see you around, kid. And he just walks off and dissipates. And you're like, bah, bah, bah. Anywho, Kylo Ren's like in shock, obviously, at this moment. Because he realized he's been defeated without getting a scratch on him. Like, a horrible defeat. An emotional, mental force battle that just destroyed him. Anyway, come to find out, Luke is using a force power that no one's ever seen before. I guess you would call it force projection, but it's some kind of a physical projection as well, because their lightsabers managed to touch during this battle, but he was an illusion. He was casting his self out through the universe to this place. Like, the strain on him had to have been amazing. I'm going to go back to one other scene, the most emotional scene for me. I'm crying over a Star Wars review. This is a very personal thing for me. After Luke decides he's going to burn down the tree and burn the books, the Jedi, because it's ridiculous and this needs to end, Yoda's Force Ghost appears. And not only was it Yoda's Force Ghost, it was puppetry with the glowiness around it. And it was Frank Oz. And it was the Yoda from Empire Strikes Back that you first meet, the crazy Yoda. Like, it was just... And I had a very close bond between my grandmother and myself. And whenever we would play with my Star Wars action figures, I would always let her be Yoda. And Yoda became Han Solo, Yoda, like my favorite characters for so many different reasons. Anywho, he's there and he talks to Luke. And his Force Ghost is actually able to physically interact with Luke. Like, he whacks him on the head with his cane. And he sits and they talk. And then, right before that, Luke's like, I'm going to burn this place down. And Yoda starts giggling. And the skies suddenly turn to a storm. And lightning strikes the tree and starts burning it. And Luke turns around and, like, Yoda's still laughing. Like, this is silly. Like, did you read all those books? He's like, they were real page turners, weren't they? There's some comment like that in Yoda speak. That was awesome. And by far, the best part of the movie for me was that scene right there. With Yoda and Luke sitting and talking and realizing that failure is a lesson. And I think that's something we can all learn from this movie. Second favorite scene had to be that Luke versus Kylo at the very end on Crate. Was just phenomenal, and I cannot wait to see the movie again. However, with that being said, it was, in my opinion, and everyone's entitled to their own opinions, obviously it was a great movie from a certain point of view. I guess that's the best way I can put it. But for me, it was by far not the greatest Star Wars movie ever. It had a lot of amazing Star Wars moments, but it did not live up to what I expected or wanted. Yeah. So there's your spoiler-filled review by me. On one hand, I would give this movie an 11. On the other hand, I would say I'd give it like a 7.5. It was still a good Star Wars movie. It was a good Star Wars movie. It just wasn't the Star Wars I wanted, I guess. Okay, so after I started editing this, I realized there were 4 points. That's 8. There was 4 points I wanted to make that I forgot to make. They're small, but they're worth mentioning. First of all is the droids. I would like to have seen more of C-3PO and R2-D2. I know they're moving in a new direction with new characters and new droids. However, there was a brief meeting between Luke and R2, which was really awesome to see and have them reconnect. Even though it's a droid, they've always had these very unique personalities. And there's actually another one with C-3PO that's even more brief, which would have been nice to see them interact. It could have happened. It didn't have to happen because it wasn't critical to the story, but for those of us who have followed Star Wars since 1977, I know I was 2 years old, but it would have been nice. The second thing, and this is really minor, but it's the first time that I can think of that the name God was invoked in the movie. Like, I don't think it was referenced as a deity. I think it was more like, for God's sake, or something like that. But it reminded me of in The Empire Strikes Back when the rebel officer tells Han that his Tauntaun won't make it past the first marker. Then Han says, "I'll see you in hell." It's the only two references to a past from a galaxy long time away ago, whatever. It's the only time, twice in the movies, that there is a link to any other correlation to our world or our history or our belief system. And I thought it was interesting to hear it. I just wanted to say that. Third, the very end of the movie did not feel, like I was saying earlier, like it was bridging movies. Like usually with most stories, there's a beginning, a middle, and an ending. That's usually how a narrative, a story works. This one, the way it ended is they're going to start rebuilding the rebellion, which I'm assuming they're going to call it the rebellion again, which I really hope they do, and I wish they'd just call it the Empire. The First Order and the Resistance just seemed so ridiculous. Like, we know who they are, why they're here. Just call it what it is. Come on. Why'd you have to change the name for a new generation? Like, just keep it the Empire and the Rebellion. Like, by now, though, I do have to say, that's one of my problems with The Force Awakens is, like, it was very much A New Hope rebooted in a way, and it had a lot of original ideas, but I would have thought after the fall of the Empire, there would have been a little bit more balance, if not more, of the Republic and the Rebellion coming into power. The new, what did they call it in the Timothy Zahn books? I can't remember. The New Republic, I think it was. And at the end of this movie, it was just almost a little too hopeful. Like, I kind of wanted a dismal cloud hanging over my head to keep me going to the next movie. This almost felt like, the end of a trilogy rather than the middle part of a trilogy. So I guess we'll have to wait and see where Episode 9 goes. And the last thing I want to mention, a lot of people are complaining about this, and I don't know where I stand on it yet. And this is huge spoilers, is at the very end of the movie, after Luke has projected himself and fought Kylo, disappears, you see him back on Ahch-To. He's sitting cross-legged on the rock. He's struggling. You can see he's tired and exhausted, but he's able to pull himself up and sit cross-legged, watching the twin sons of Ahch-To set just like he did, in the scene in A New Hope, which was a beautiful moment. Then all of a sudden, his clothes just drop and his cloak flies off into the sunset. And now I'd be very upset if Luke had gone out like a chump or something like that. It almost seemed like he was giving himself over to the Force. And now knowing what we know about the Force, the fact that Yoda can physically interact and use the Force in our world as a Force ghost, it gives me hope that they can continue to use the Luke Skywalker character in new and exciting ways. I would prefer to have seen him physically in the last movie, because now that Carrie Fisher is dead and Han Solo, the character, is dead, although I do have a theory where he could still be alive, but we'll talk about that another time. It would have been nice to carry over with Luke. And now that he's physically gone, he'll have to be a Force ghost if they choose to use him in the next movie. Unless they find some way that they can go between the two worlds, between, physical and the spiritual, whatever that is. But I just wanted to mention that because I don't know how I feel about it. If Luke was going to go out anyway, I think I like that. Like that the Jedi, the strong, powerful Jedi Master, has given himself over to the Force and moved on. However, he could have gone out in so many other cool ways. We never got to actually see him. We saw his projection use a lightsaber, but it would have been cool to see that green saber one more time. Anywho, I just want to mention these last few things. I just took a shower, as you can see. And they were my thoughts that I wanted to share with you. Okay, so here's your outro. Thank you guys for sticking around for this ridiculously lengthy, spoiler-filled. Give me a minute. Let me share it and forget anything else. Poe, Finn, Kylo Ren. General Hux. General Hux was a great character. Much better in this movie. Like, he had a lot more screen time. He was much more developed. He has interactions with Snoke and Kylo Ren that were really good. I thought his character was interesting. Captain Phasma is the Boba Fett of this series. her and Finn obviously have a cool little battle, which she clearly towards the end overpowers Finn and goes out like a bitch. Goes out like a dirty bitch, just like every other... Boba Fett, cool, mysterious bounty hunter character, gets eaten by the Sarlacc because a nearly blind guy accidentally knocks him into it. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't quite that bad, but it was like, I'm standing on the floor, and now the floor just fell out underneath me. Okay. That was the last two things I wanted to say about the movie. Absolutely go out and see it. It's worth watching for all these moments that build. However, it just isn't the salmon of Capistrano. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hope you like the old set. Just back for a short amount of time, playing around with things. I forgot to change this to 60 frames a second. I wanted to record this 60 frames a second, so we're going 24. You guys, thank you guys for always stopping by. It means the world to me. If you love watching these as much as I'm loving making them, please consider subscribing, liking, commenting, and sharing. That shit really helps me out. When you comment, when you like, when you share, YouTube takes notice of that if that's happening consistently. And when it doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. If you're enjoying these, I don't really care. Don't forget to make somebody smile tomorrow. Make yourself a better person tomorrow than you were today tomorrow. Let's make the world spin a little bit happier together. Let's sing and dance in the sun and in the rain, my brothers and sisters. Live life to the fullest and love every moment of it, because you just never know when that last moment's going to come for you. However, never live in fear of that moment. Always live in love, and never let your inner child die. That's very important. Take care of yourselves, take care of one another, and take care of those around you who can't take care of themselves because they're the ones that need it the most. I'm Jason Oliver. This has been my awesome, fantastic, spoiler-filled Star Wars review. Tune in next time when I eat some Oreos, I'm sure. I'll see you guys a little bit further on down the road. And as always, may the Force be with you.